Sugidama blog. Sugidama blog.
Hey everyone, welcome to the first episode of Season 2 of Sugidama Podcast, the podcast about Japanese sake, the drink I never stop enjoying. And today we will talk about how to pick the right sake for you. But before that, I would like to remind you about our sponsor, London Sake, who have one of the widest selection of premium and craft sake available online today. You can choose from over 100 sake from 25 breweries, and they will deliver across the UK and many European markets. The cool thing about their website is that you can use simple online tasting notes together with very sensible and affordable food pairings to make your choice and pick up the perfect sake to enjoy. And today, we will also talk about how to pick great sake. What's more, you can get a 10% discount by just using the code SUGIDAMA, all caps, during checkout. London Sake, making sake simple. So, it's been 12 episodes so far, which is not a lot by podcast standards. I would like to entertain you with new episodes more often. I can't promise to do it in this season, though I will try. I'm extremely happy to be back with new stuff. It's been a quite difficult winter, and I'm recording this episode on the last day of the winter. And I'm looking forward to spring. I hope that spring will bring some more enjoyable stuff. Lockdown is going to be eased, and we'll be back to, seeing each other, talking to each other, and drinking sake together. So it's great time to start the season 2. So, if you like Sugidama Podcast and would like to help it grow, please leave a review. If you use Apple Podcasts, it's pretty easy. Unfortunately, Google and Spotify still don't have this functionality. But you can always share the podcast on your social media with your friends. And please tell anyone who expressed any interest in sake to listen to it. I rely on you. I would like to start this season with an episode which would help you pick up sake you will enjoy. What could be worse than to order something, wait for it with excitement, and then realize that it's something you don't like? It happens very often, unfortunately, and buying or ordering sake is not an exception. It's especially important in sake as it's a great drink to explore with a huge variety of brands, types, styles, grades, and so on. So in this episode, I would like to give you a few tips on choosing sake and also talk about some parameters you will find on the bottle beside the milling ratio. In addition to this episode, you can listen to the interviews I did with Satomi, Oliver, Erika and Natsuki last year, episode 7, 9, 10 and 11, as they also had great and useful tips. And my tips, of course, are based on my own experience. The tips are relevant to both ordering sake at restaurant and buying it to drink at home or somebody's house if you decided to bring a nice bottle of sake when it's allowed. So, tip number 1. You have come to a shop selling sake or a restaurant which has sake on its drinks menu and you feel lost. I was in this situation. You look at the bottles, names and descriptions, but cannot figure out what to buy or order. So, tip number 1, ask the staff. Depending on the establishment, the staff could be either very knowledgeable about the sake they sell or serve, or at least know the basics. Of course, if you're at a nice Japanese restaurant and they have a sommelier, the task of choosing your drink is easy. Many sommeliers have their own way of finding out what you like and suggest something that they believe you will like. They will ask you a few questions and then come up with some ideas what sake to order. The only issue at a restaurant is that the more expensive the sake is, the more likely it's sold only by bottle. And there are a few good reasons for that. First of all, expensive sake is usually Ginjo style, which is fruity and aromatic, but also is less stable. As soon as you open the bottle, the oxidation starts, and after a few days, Daiginjo sake tastes slightly different from the original taste. I know that in some restaurants, the sommelier tastes the open sake every day to make sure it is suitable for serving to the customers. Not that it necessarily becomes bad, but it changes its aroma profile and taste. The traffic of sake orders in most of restaurants outside Japan is definitely less frequent than in Japan itself. So if you open a bottle of expensive sake for one customer, there is no guarantee its content will be sold before it's, let's say, matured. The restaurant will lose money, so there is something to keep in mind. If you would like to have a glass of nice junmai daiginjo, it's not always possible, which makes your choice a bit limited. But in any case, the staff at a restaurant or wine shop might give you some ideas about the sake they sell, even if they are not sake experts. Use it. Don't be afraid to ask stupid questions, as there is not such a thing as a stupid question, especially in sake. Tip number 2. So, if there is no knowledgeable person available to help you, you need to start from food. Generally, sake is drunk with food. Even if you come to have a glass of sake at a bar in Japan, it usually comes with some nibbles like miso, wasabi, and so on. Outside Japan, it's different. Sake bars are more common in the US than in Europe. I know only very few in London, and I doubt if there are any outside London in the UK. Ordinary bars here usually don't serve sake. I know Moto in London, dedicated sake bar, and I think there is a bar at Chizo, a restaurant, and probably a couple of more. But otherwise, you don't have sake bars here. So, with a few exceptions, you either have sake at a restaurant with a meal or at home. At a restaurant, you normally face a choice of a light meal like sushi, steamed or lightly grilled fish or chicken, salad, and so on. Or you can have a richer meal like steak, chicken teriyaki, curry, roasted veggies, or some other meat. The rule of thumb is to order Ginjo-style sake with light meals and junmai or futsushu for rich food. Honjozo could be a bit tricky. Generally, it's more aromatic than junmai, but less refined than Ginjo, so it might fit a wider variety of meals. Same with having sake at home. Think of food first, and then buy sake to match the food. Or, if you want to buy a particular sake, decide on food accordingly. Again, use the staff at a restaurant or at the store and tell them what food you would like to have with sake, and ask for their recommendations. If you would like to drink sake on its own, then pick something higher grade. Aromatic daiginjo, junmai daiginjo is probably your best bet. If you prefer something drier or more savory, choose honjozo or junmai. However, this recommendation works in 85-90% of cases. There are junmai sake which will go very nicely with sashimi or lightly grilled chicken, for example, but you might find a junmai ginjo which will be perfect with steak. Tip number 3. A type of sake will give you a hint how the sake might taste. Again, it's a bit of generalization, but it usually works. Nigori, a cloudy sake, usually sweeter and quite mouthful. I have mentioned it before. Many people like to have it with sushi due to a nice contrast between sweetness of sake and saltness of the sushi. But it could be nice with a dessert or cheese, but to be honest, any sake is great with cheese. Nama, unpasteurized sake, usually zingy and lively with high acidity and less smooth taste. So it could be very delicious with richer food. If you feel adventurous, Namazaki, as it's often referred to, is a great choice, and it usually has a quite interesting taste you can muse about. Gensho, undiluted sake, usually punchier, as it has more alcohol. Roasted meat or vegetables is a great pairing. Or you can have it on the rocks, as it's undiluted. If you listened to Satomi's interview last year, she recommended Nishoneseki Cube Honjozo Genshu as a perfect sake to have on the rocks. Tip number 4. Look at the price. It's a simple tip. Sake is generally fairly priced. So the more you pay, usually the better sake you get. Keep in mind that sake outside Japan is much more expensive compared to local prices. If you take the UK, for example, it usually costs you 3 times more for a bottle than in Japan. The transportation cost is the main factor. Japan is far away and sake is quite delicate, so you need a special arrangement to bring it here. Interesting thing about transportation is that if you take New World wines, it can be transported in big tanks and then bottled here. It saves a lot of transportation costs. Unfortunately, it doesn't work with sake. Bottling in sake is a part of sake brewing. First, you have to dilute sake before bottling, and I don't think it's a good idea to transport diluted sake. So, if theoretically you can bring a tank of undiluted sake, you will need a specialist from the brewery to dilute it before bottling. Second, sake is more delicate than wine, despite a higher alcohol content, especially Ginjo style. So it's quite difficult to transport it in tanks without losing the quality. So unfortunately, we have to pay more to enjoy sake. Don't try to look at prices in Japan and think that sake is overpriced here. It's not. The good proof that sake is fairly priced is that sometimes you can see a junmai sake having a higher price tag than a Ginjo one. So the grade is not always the main price factor. My rule of thumb for buying sake is to buy sake which is not cheaper than 18-20 quid for a standard 720ml bottle. Of course, there are exceptions, as in everything sake. Sometimes you can buy very nice sake for, say, £15. In the States, sake prices are slightly lower, as I can see from American websites. Also, keep in mind that there are local sake producers outside Japan, so their prices are slightly lower. So make your adjustment. Before giving you the last tip, I want to remind you about London Sake, our sponsor, and their cool curated sake tasting sets. If you are learning about sake, the tasting sets give you a great opportunity to compare different styles, grades, breweries, and so on. So have a look. Don't forget about the magic word Sugidama, all caps, to get your 10% discount. The last tip I would like to share is basically to shed some light to the numbers you will find on sake label, usually back label on the bottle. The good thing is that even if the label is not translated, the numbers are the numbers, so you will recognize them. Let's start with something we have already talked about, milling or polishing ratio, called seimaibuai in Japanese. It's usually a big percentage number. Theoretically, it can be between 0 and 100%. It's an interesting fact I have learned from the excellent Sake Bible book by Brian Ashcraft. In Japan, the milling ratio is rounded down. So even it's, say, 50.9, it's rounded to 50. So if the milling ratio is slightly less than 1%, it's rounded to 0. Crazy, isn't it? Anyway, in reality, any sake with milling ratio below, say, 30% will be very expensive. So if you look at the affordable range, you will probably see something between 40% and 70%. So you know that the big percentage number is a milling ratio. There is usually another percentage number, which is ABV, or alcohol content. It varies from 12% in some sake to 20%, but normally between 15 and 17%. So generally, if it's over 16, it's likely Ginjo. But again, you can find sometimes Ginjo with 16% ABV. Now, there are two other numbers usually displayed: SMV, or sake mite value, or Nihonshudo in Japanese, and acidity. The combination of these two should, in theory, give you some idea about how sake should taste. I have to say straight away that there are two schools of thoughts on the usefulness of these numbers, as with everything in sake. John Gontner, the sake guy and the author of the Sake Handbook, believes that SMV, sake mite value, is useless, as a lot of other factors contribute into the taste of sake. However, there are a lot of people who find it useful. Before going into arguments, let's try to understand what this sake mite value actually is. Officially, it's a measure of sweetness-dryness of sake. The idea is that sweeter sake is heavier compared to drier sake. It's measured by suspending a float filled with water, called a flotation meter, in sake at a certain temperature. The top of the float has a scale, so if the float is suspended in water, it points to 0. If sake is sweet, it is heavier. Then water is therefore pushes the flotation meter up, resulting in negative numbers. And vice versa. If sake is drier, it's lighter, so the float submerges in it more, resulting in positive numbers. So why the sweeter sake is heavier than drier sake? It's simple. During the brewing process, the rice starch is converted into sugar, which then converted to alcohol and CO2. But usually not all sugar is turned into alcohol, and sugar is heavier than alcohol, which is lighter than water. So the ratio between sugar and alcohol in sweeter sake is skewed towards sugar, making the sake heavier, and the ratio in drier sake is skewed towards alcohol, making it lighter. Theoretically, SMV ranges from -20 to 20, well, basically it can be whatever numbers, with 0 being neutral. In reality, the average SMV range is between 0 and +5, with a median around +3, +4. The thing is that the palate of sake drinkers has changed in the last 40-50 years, and people now prefer dry sake. It's mostly because food has changed. Japanese people drink more beer and wine, which are again drier than sake. So what does this SMV number tell us? Well, not a great deal, to be honest. Yes, if sake is -10, it's quite sweet. I remember drinking such sake and thinking that it's really sweet. Even Chidorigawa Kinka, which is -6, is sweet. It's true for the opposite, like kanpai sake, which is usually in big plus numbers, +6, +9, or any karakuchi sake, which means extra dry. And it could be +6 and more. And these sake are really dry. However, if we talk about small numbers, say from -5 to +5, I don't think it will necessarily provide a good indication of the sake's taste. The reason is that the taste depends on many other factors, and the level of sugar is only one of them. Sometimes you drink sake with sake mite value of -4, and it doesn't feel sweet at all. And then you might try +2 and say, oh, it's sweeter. The difference could be down to another parameter, usually displayed on a sake bottle: acidity. So acidity in sake ranges normally from 1 to 2. The average is 1.3. So you will recognize the number on the bottle's label, even if it's in Japanese. Mind that wine usually have acidity between 2.5 and 4.5. So sake is much less acidic. So what is the acidity? It's basically the same measure as in wine and derived through titration. You take 10 milliliters of sake and start neutralizing it with a liquid solution of sodium hydroxide, which is usually called caustic soda or lye. The number of milliliters of caustic soda which makes the sake neutral is your acidity number. Again, acidity on its own doesn't give you a lot of information. Generally, the high acidity makes sake richer and low acidity makes it lighter. However, when you combine it with SMV or Nihonshudo, you will get a better picture of the sake's profile. So you have two parameters: sweetness-dryness, represented by SMV, and richness-lightness, represented by acidity. Therefore, we have four combinations: dry-rich, sweet-light, and dry-light. However, it's not that simple as everything in sake. Let's say we have a sake with the high acidity and high sweetness. The high acidity will likely neutralize the sweetness of the sake. So it won't taste sweet and rich, but rather dry and rich. Same with high acidity and high dryness. The dryness will neutralize the richness of the high acidity, and we will have a rather dry and light sake. Another example, let's say you are looking at a sake label and see a higher negative SMV number, for example -15, indicating high sweetness, and medium acidity around 1.5. The sake with this combination will be probably sweet and rich, while mid-dryness and low acidity will mean that sake is sweet and light. But again, there are other things that influence the taste of sake: the temperature you drink it at, your own perception, sake aroma, the water used in brewing, a glass or cup you drink the sake from, the food you have it with, even your mood and the weather. So SMV and acidity numbers are useful, but they won't give you the exact taste of sake. I usually pay attention to them if I'm looking for a particular profile. If I want sweet sake, so I will pick up something with SMV below -5, preferably something between 7 and 12, but I will keep an eye on acidity to make sure it's not too high to offset the sweetness. So a quick summary. First, ask the people who sell or serve sake for recommendations. Second, have Ginjo with light food and junmai with richer meals as a rough food pairing guidance. Third, a type of sake will give you a hint how the sake might taste: sweet and nigori or more acidic kimoto, for example. Fourth, look at the price. It's a good indicator of the quality of the sake. Fifth, take a notice of the SMV acidity combination to get a rough idea of the sake taste. And the last tip is to keep in mind that sake is not a science but art. Be prepared for nice surprises, nice because I haven't had a nasty surprise with sake yet. So the first sake of the episode of the new season, and today I would like to recommend Dewazakura Ichiro, which has an English name Abbey Road. The thing is that I live not far from Abbey Road in London, the street where the famous Abbey Road studio is located, where so much of great music has been recorded, including the eponymous album by the Beatles, which remains my favorite rock band, together with King Crimson. Anyway, I was looking for sake to have on my birthday in January, and when I saw Dewazakura Ichiro Abbey Road, I got very excited. So I asked my sponsor, London Sake, if they could give me a discount. And Andy was so nice, sending me this sake as a birthday present. Yay! Thanks a lot! I have already talked about the brewery, which makes such great sake as Oka Ginjo, the first commercial Ginjo sake, Dewazakura Omachi, made from my favorite omachi rice, and a spring treat, Dewazakura Sarasara Nigori Nama, among many others. So let's talk about Ichiro, which literally means one road, probably the reason for the English Abbey Road name. It's a beautiful junmai Ginjo sake with rice polishing ratio of 45%, SMV of +3 and acidity of 1.3. So, as we have just learned, it should be dry and light. And it was, in a way. First of all, it's a very aromatic sake with a lot of complexity in the aroma. If you are interested in picking up various smells from sake, a very popular pastime for many sake drinkers, it's a lot to pick up. You have honey, melon, cheese, rice, apple, strawberry yogurt, and probably a lot more. I have also noticed that the viscosity of Dewazakura Ichiro was higher than usual. Taste-wise, it was superb. First, I thought it was sweet and peppery with a complex taste. You will notice plum, honey, green tea, and orange drops. However, when I had it for the second time, on the next day, it tasted less sweet than for the first time. It definitely becomes sweeter as the temperature rises, but I would still recommend it slightly chilled. Another cool thing about Dewazakura Ichiro Abbey Road is its texture, lavish and smooth with a lazy finish and a bit of spiciness, like a hot chili spice. In terms of food pairing, it's very versatile, but best with sashimi, seafood, even beef, so highly recommend it. That's it for today. I'll be back with more episodes and exciting interviews. In the meantime, go and pick up a sake based on what it has on the label and try to guess how it might taste. Then try and see how close you are. Let me know how your experiment went. It's always so interesting to learn about other people's experiences. Our sponsor, London Sake, have the full information about all sake they sell. So it's easy to pick up something you are looking for based on the style, types, sake value meter and acidity. And don't forget to mention Sugidama, all caps, at checkout to get your 10% discount. You can actually explore the tasting notes section on Sugidama blog at sugidama.co.uk and see in the additional information section all the parameters of any particular sake on the website. You can also look up a few new sake reviews my collaborators have posted recently, including Jordan Smithcroft's review of a cute Maruishi Nito white label sake and Jamie Ryder's red maple sake. Again, if you like the episode and want more, hit the subscribe button. Please leave a review and share the podcast with your friends. It's the best thing you can do to support Sugidama podcast. Thanks a lot for listening. Kanpai!
Suge, 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 Sugidama blog. Suge, 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 Sugidama blog.